Welcome to Wake Up with Patti Katter. Come dive into today's episode, sponsored by the Patriotic Mermaid.
Hello, everybody. You're listening to and watching Wake Up with Patti, and I'm your hostess, Patti Katter. And today I have Dwight Heck with me on the show. Dwight is going to be a great interview because we haven't ever had a single father on the show, and that's what we're going to talk about today with Dwight. So, Dwight, I'm going to dive in with you on just starting to ask you some questions and start drilling you, if that's okay.
Sounds fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Dwight. So if you could just tell our listeners just a little bit about who you are and where you came from, that's fantastic. That's where I like to always start so that our guests can instantly connect with you.
Okay. I live in Canada, specifically in a province called Alberta, in the capital city of Edmonton. I have 5 kids. They're all adults. I was a single dad from 2008 on. Prior to that, I had joint custody of my kids. My whole life has been defined by family, not that that's bad. And I've struggled throughout these times, raising them on my own as a single dad, and some of the challenges that come about having 4 daughters and 1 son, especially when I got full custody of them when they were teenagers. It was kind of interesting. But yeah, I'm in the financial services industry for the last 18 years. Prior, I was an IT consultant, went to school for electronics engineering, and I've had lots of different jobs in between, right down to being a paper boy.
Mm-hmm. So when I was reading your bio, I thought of a few different things we could talk about, but one of the things that stuck out to me most is that you were a single father, and you are a single father. I've heard so many things about single moms, but I really don't know a whole lot about single fathers. And I just think that there may be some extra trials that you go through, because a lot of people expect a single mom maybe, or a lot of people have heard that the courts normally just award the mother custody of the children no matter what. But that's definitely not the case. And as time goes by, and as I'm getting older, I'm learning that there are a lot of single dads out there, and there's not a ton of support for them. So I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about when you first became a single father. You mentioned that you had some joint custody and, before that, but
Yeah.
what led up to the point of you being a single dad, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. So I had joint custody of my kids, and it got to a point where out of the 5 kids, there was constantly phone calls, and I'd go rescue them. Sometimes from the front of the house, they'd be hiding under a tree, or the side of the house, or I'd pick them up at the local store. And there was so much trauma from their mom's side of the family that their mom was still trying to deal with, that she was projecting it on the kids. And it got to a point that in approximately 2006, it was getting so bad. I'd have kids come live with me. They'd stay with me sometimes 6 months. I had one stay with me for 2 years, and then mom would offer them the moon, and they'd move back in with mom and go back to the joint custody situation. But I could see their pain and anguish. And it was getting to the point that her materialistic offerings weren't good enough for them. And they started saying comments to me that, Dad, when do we get to make the decision to be with you? The more stable parent, the person that's always consistent. And at that point, even though their mom had joint custody with me, I took them to all their extracurricular activities. I was the one dealing with the school. I was the one paying all the fees. I might as well have been the full-time parent. I think it might sound harsh, but their mom's house became just a flop house for them.
Mm-hmm.
And when they'd go to get out of my vehicle for the week to be with their mom, they used to dread it. And it broke my heart. So in 2006, I made a decision. I had a nice enough home, but I wanted to build a home that was going to be, no bad memories. Not that there was bad memories in my house, but they'd bring those bad memories to my home. right? And then we'd have to deal with that and their heartache. So I decided to build something new, because God was talking to me and telling me, you know what, you're going to have those kids. And in 2007, I moved into the house, had the first of the 5 kids move in with me full time. And by 2008, I had, at that time, it would have been my 13-year-old daughter call me up crying, kids in the background saying, you know, when is our turn? When do we get to make a decision? And I said, right now. You just made a decision. I'm coming to get you guys. And I come and got them all except the youngest, my son. She refused to let him go, because at that point in time, he was, I can't even think how old he was now. He was maybe 8, 9 years old. So I took the girls and left and started a long, just about 3-year process in court. And, you know, I can talk a little bit about that as we go through this conversation about how difficult it is for a man to get custody of his kids, and how the stigma of me being a parent because I'm male, that I'm not good enough. And, you know, that's a good start.
Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of men who've said that they've stayed with their spouse just so that the kids will be happy. But I believe that in cases like yours, or a lot of cases out there, that the kids will be happier if you're not with that person, or the spouse, or, you know, your significant other who you had children with. So sometimes it doesn't work out, and it's okay for parents to split up. And in your case, they're really lucky that they have you in their lives, because a lot of them don't have a dad in their life. But you're a good example of a dad who doesn't have to be with the mother of the children, and you're still taking care of your kids. So kudos to you on that. Now, when you first realized that you're going to have all of your kids under one roof, for the most part, except for your youngest, what were your thoughts? Were you nervous about that, or happy about that, or both?
I don't know if I necessarily was nervous, because I already had honed the skills to be that parent that they deserved. They didn't ask for us to get divorced. They didn't ask for the craziness that ensued even through the divorce process. So no, I wasn't necessarily nervous about that. I was nervous about how I was going to continue to work and pay the bills, because all of a sudden I didn't have that period of time where I'd have a week where I could work hard and then have that week where I didn't, right? Because during the weeks that I didn't have them, I still picked them up and took to their extracurricular activities, but I could still drop them off at mom's, and I'd go do appointments in my finance business. So I wasn't really nervous about that. I was kind of anxious when they moved in, because now all of a sudden their eyes are looking at me for everything. And they already had. That's the thing I had to admit to myself within the first, I'd say, 3 months. They already had been leaning on me for everything. They already had been calling me for even my daughters in regards to their feminine needs. I didn't have a problem with that. I dealt with that. So when they moved in, it just magnified the fact that it was real time, 24/7. That I had to always be engaged, and so I was nervous about how I was going to provide for them, obviously, not just on the emotional front, but the financial front, because if you're not financially able to provide for your family, your emotional front is kind of tattered and ragged, and it's stressful, right? So yeah, so when they moved in, yeah, I had some angst, absolutely. I wasn't worried about raising them, though. I had already been doing that for years. And some people had already said that I was a single dad raising my kids, because they didn't see any really interjection from their mom that I was doing it all.
And so when you took the kids to your house to live, and you were in charge of everything, when you would go to the schools for parent-teacher conferences, I'm kind of curious how that would go, because, you know, sometimes either parents will go together, or mom takes the responsibility a lot. You don't see dad come in a lot. So I bet you teachers were pretty impressed with you, but I bet you also may have had some questions.
Oh, I had lots of questions. When I went to the school, I was ostracized by some teachers in the way that they talked to me. They talked to me in that snidey tone. They would answer my questions but they wouldn't necessarily give me the respect I deserved because I had earned it. I had never given them the impression I was a bad person. Um, the kids' mom had spread rumors about me. So it took a while before people started to warm up to me. Did everybody? Absolutely not. In the parent-teacher interviews, we got to the point where there would be two of them. I would go, and then the mom would go. Within about a year, she stopped going altogether.
Mm-hmm.
She was just trying to put up a facade like many parents do, because it happens on both sides, male and female. They try to present themselves as something they're not. And the school I dealt with everything. The school would call me. Kid got hurt. I was the one doing it prior to having them full custody. So the administration were always kind to me because they knew I was the one pulling the weight.
Mm-hmm.
But it was trying to get past, like you said, the teachers. And the worst though was the parents and how they segregated me, because I would go on field trips with the school because I self-employed. I'd go on as many field trips as I could for my kids for the numerous schools they were in. And the way I got treated on field trips by some of the staff or the parents, I'd be given, here, you take these little boys, no girls,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was unbelievable. And it took years before some of these, I could break the barriers down that, I wasn't a pedophile. I wasn't a wife beater. I wasn't alcoholic. I wasn't a drug addict. I was just a man that was put in circumstances that didn't work out, and I was doing whatever I could to support my children and raise them. So yeah, it was kind of character building at sometimes.
Mm-hmm. I remember you saying that you had mostly girls. Did you say 4 girls?
Yes, 4 daughters, and the youngest is a boy.
So from a mom standpoint, I remember when my oldest daughter had a friend who lived with her dad, and this little girl asked my daughter if she could come stay the night. And I remember how nervous I was because it was just the dad and the little girl there. And of course, I'm just being super honest here. Of course, your mind is like, oh, I don't know, because it's a man, but if the situation was where both parents were there, I may not have thought about it. However, we should think about any place our kids go, regardless if it's a mom or a dad, because I've heard some really bad stories about some moms who have had kids over, and then she ended up having, she was smoking a joint in the backyard. That was one story that my daughter's friend told us, that she's like, oh yeah, so-and-so's mom does this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you don't want your kids to go there, Now it's a little bit different. Marijuana's legal. We won't go into that whole thing. But you know what I'm saying, I think. So what about that? Like, your girls wanting to go places and have friends over. How was that for you?
It was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter's 12th birthday, we planned a huge gathering, had the house all decorated. I think she had about 12 to 15 kids invited.
Mm-hmm.
If it wouldn't have been for some of her cousins coming, there was only one kid that was invited that actually showed up. And yet we had RSVP from probably 10 kids.
Wow.
And they didn't show up. And my daughter's now graduated this year from nursing.
Mm-hmm.
And, she's just turned 25 a couple weeks ago, but it still resonates with her. It still bothers her. And it angered her. And as an adult, they're very protective of me. And, stuff like that, you're right. We should worry whether or not our children are going to whatever they go to. My kids, when they lived with me, it drove them nuts. Oh, we're going to such and such place. Okay, well, give me the phone number. I got to talk to the parent, or the parent has to call me. Why? Because I'm your caregiver. I'm your protector. I'm your person that needs to make sure you're safe. But that birthday party still resonates, even in my mind, made me sad, and I cried. It was horrible. And there was many parties like that over the years where the parents wouldn't allow their kids to come, and the kids were segregated. It was terrible. One level of segregation we had happen when I first got the kids. I'll add this little story. My kids, I was friends with these 2 ladies. I won't use their names, Lady A, Lady B.
Mhm.
And they were both married, had kids. We went to soccer together, like community soccer. I was good friends with the husbands, good friends with the wives. We used to all, at that time I was already divorced. And all of a sudden, these two ladies left their husbands and became a couple. They came out. And I was one of the parents that still communicated with them, where everybody else in the school ostracized them. And they'd stand way off when they picked the kids up, and their kids would come over to them. I'd go talk to them, which just compounded the problem of what I was going through. But at the end of the day, I don't allow the committee of they to control who I'm going to associate and communicate with. And people are terrible how they judge one another for, sometimes it's out of their hands. It's just, it is who they are. They're wired a certain way. I was wired to be a single dad, I believe a good single dad, and they were wired not to be married to men. And, they had wonderful kids, and we still communicate. I still know where they are, what they're up to. My kids are still friends with their kids, because that's another thing. Their kids would come to our parties. My kids would go to their parties. Nobody else in the school would go to their stuff. So we supported one another. So that's why I wanted to tell you that little story.
And that's good, because a lot of our listeners and watchers, they are always looking for something to take from this. So if you're watching right now, and if you're a single father maybe, or even if you're just a person who you're feeling alone right now, like nobody else is like you, there are other people like you out there, and there's some amazing people like you out there. So, Dwight, I was wondering if you could tell us one of your hardest trials during that whole time of having your kids living with you as a single father. Can you pick out one time that was maybe the hardest, and how you overcame that trial?
I think one of the hardest trials was the fact that when they were living with me, is my one daughter, even though I had a court order that I had full custody of them, my one daughter was easily manipulated by their mom. And she ended up, she'd get mad at me because I wouldn't let her go out with friends, or I'd want to call that parent, or that parent call me. And she'd get mad and run off to her mom's, sometimes for a week, 10 days, 2 weeks. It was no use going to court or trying to do anything, because it costs so much money. And the end result, at that age, she was about, I think 13, 14. She would take off to her mom's house, and this became a repetitious thing. And I denied her to go to a New Year's Eve party, right? She was 15 years old, 14. Yeah, she had just turned 15. Denied her to go to a New Year's Eve party. So, I thought it was all whatever. She says, "Oh, I'm going to go hang out with mom on New Year's Eve." And what was I supposed to do? I said, "Well, I'd rather you not. She's not a good influence. I have custody of you. But, if I don't let you go, you're just going to take off. So, okay, go ahead." Well, her mom let her go to this party to be with these people anyway. And, the answer to what happened there is sitting on my couch right now. And he's 7 years old, going to be 8. Right. So she ended up getting pregnant at that party. So that was really difficult to deal with, because I felt helpless. And it happened over quite a few year period of time, trying to protect her, and her thinking that, and her mom convincing her that I was just a control freak. And it was really difficult, because it got out into the community. Obviously, we all have little communities, our school communities, extracurricular communities, and the stares, and the little whispers, and the gossips, and in conversation, a little innuendo. And it was really tough for me to deal with emotionally and mentally, and stay strong for the other kids too, while trying to emotionally help a girl out because she ended up getting into a fight with her mom, and she was with me for the whole pregnancy. She was with me for just until he just about turned, I think it was a year and a half, just about 2 years old, before she finally moved out, got her own place. So it was challenging, because all of a sudden now people in society that were already judging me, that may have started to warm up to me a little bit. And all of a sudden, see, look what he did. Now she's pregnant. if he would have been a better father, a better parent. Now, if his mom, you know what I mean? I heard all that. I actually heard this stuff said to me. Well, maybe if she had stayed with her mom, and I'd bite my lip. Some people I'd say, well, this happened because her mom let it happen. I didn't have anything to do with it. It was out of my control. But, you know, people don't believe you. They don't care. They're going to believe what they're going to believe, whether, you know, you try to explain yourself or not. So that was probably one of the most challenging things, having a teenage, well, she wasn't even a teenager yet. When she had my grandson, she was a teenager, but prior to that, she wasn't. Well, I guess so. She was 15. Sorry, she was a teenager, but it was really challenging. It just compounded. You know, we don't want to believe that we care about what others think, and we try really hard not to as a society, but it does. You can see those laser stares or people looking at you, and you know, all of a sudden now I'm have a car seat in my vehicle. My daughter didn't have a vehicle, couldn't drive, and I'm dropping her off. She's in school, and I've got taken him to daycare. I'm picking him up from daycare. The daycare parents who give me strange looks, or, you know what? It's just, people are cruel. Whether they try to be or not, they are.
It is true. I think that it's easy for us to say, like, I could tell you, Dwight, don't worry about those people. They're idiots, you know? But still at night when we lay our heads on the pillow, I know that we're our worst critics too. And I'm always thinking about, you know, the things that I could do better in life. And so we have our own finger pointing at ourselves that we're doing. And then with outside people also doing that, it can make it really difficult. Was there ever a time that you just thought, well, maybe I'll just throw in the towel, because what's the use in fighting all this? Or what's the use in trying to fight for these kids if, you know, we have teenage emotions and we have mom coming into play, and then she'll leave and then she comes back in. Was there a time that you were going to give up, or no, stubborn?
I'm tenacious when it comes to being stubborn. I can honestly tell you, I never had a feeling ever where I wanted to pack it in and not continue to fight for them, and always have that forgiving heart. You know, what my daughters and even my son, they'd say the cruelest things when they didn't get their ways, because it was learned behavior that they learned from their other parent. Their other parent used to talk to me like that too. Married, divorced, after the fact, you know, so they had learned behavior. And it just made me dig in my heels more, because I knew that they were hurting. And sometimes, though we say things in that knife, those words can never be taken back. As a parent, it's your responsibility to shoulder that, be bigger than that, rise above it, hydroplane above the crap, and accept the fact that they're still your child, and that you need to get over yourself, and the fact that it's about you, bothering you, that it wasn't intentional. They were just trying to get a rise out of you to get their way, or to, you know, they're hurting inside, their heart hurts, they're 6 inches between their ears, isn't able to comprehend what they're feeling quick enough, so they say things. And it dug my heels in harder to want to support them even more, not run away.
I love that. I do the same thing. When I'm passionate about something, or when I love somebody, I'll do everything I can. And I think that a lot of our listeners are like that. We're all kind of on the same wavelength as far as trying to level up ourselves and other people. What would you tell people who might know a single dad in their community? What advice would you give them to maybe reach out to that person and show them a little compassion?
If you know a single dad that's out there, look past the facade, because a lot of single dads, we still are in a society that expects men to be the strong person, and they'll put up a facade and trying to show you that they've got their act all together. And when in reality, when you open the door on their facade and you peeked inside, you see that they're hurting. They're going to bed at night, like I did for many years, in quiet desperation, frustrated, not sure who to turn to. They may have a daughter that's going through hitting puberty, and they don't know what to say. They don't know what's the questions to ask the daughter, or, how can they emotionally support, or do they know people that maybe it's a woman that goes to that single dad and they can say, you know what, I understand your daughter's 11, 12, she's going to start, she's going to start having monthly concerns. Can I be of help to you? Put your hand out, help lift people up instead of judging them for the facade they're putting up. Men are been programmed for too many years to be tough and not soft, not be vulnerable. And I wish I would have had more support. I had to go and seek that support and ask for it. And that was uncomfortable in itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because with girls, I can speak for myself. There are those monthly mood swings too that I'm sure you had a lot of fun with.
Oh, definitely. I used to, Patty, you'll think this is funny. So I've always loved cooking. So I'd get them from school, start homework, extracurricular activities I'd have to plan. So I'd cook meals for them. And, we'd sit down and we'd be discussing things. And it would be like going from 0 to 1,000 in emotions, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And one daughter would trigger another daughter who would be defending me because you shouldn't talk to dad like that. And I'd be going, well, that's okay. I understand you're going through this right now in this month. I understand emotion. That's no excuse. And you know what I mean? So all of a sudden you'd have a nice meal. And we'd have a powder keg. It would just be like, boom.
World War III.
Oh, when you have, with that many daughters, oh my goodness. And I always had, and that same daughter, let's say that would be emotional, and another daughter supporting, the next week it might be role reversal.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
So it was character building, to say the least.
To say the least, I'm sure. Where can people find your social media, Dwight?
The best place to find all my social media is to go on my website. It's www.giveaheck.com. At the bottom of just about every screen, you'll see all my links to my social media.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to do that, you can find me on Instagram at giveaheck. So give.a.heck. It wouldn't allow me to just put in give a heck, but you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on all social media platforms. I post every single day videos, and I've been doing that for quite a while. But yeah, the best place, if you want to find out about me, my about section will give them an idea of being a single dad and what I struggled through, why I got into the career that I did. And yeah, so giveaheck.com.
Excellent. I love that website. I'll never forget it. So it's a really catchy name. Do you have any last words that you'd like to say to our listeners today?
Yeah, whether you're a man or a woman, be proud of being a single parent. One of the things that you mentioned too is that when you're raising kids and, everybody thinks you have to be a couple. That's not true. Sometimes staying together is more harmful for the kids, and all the older generations that did that, I know their kids and are their clients of mine. Some of them are friends, and those kids were irreparably damaged because they could feel there was no love in the home. They could feel that there was, maybe the parents were in separate rooms. That damages them, and they never know where they stand because they're not sure which parent to please. They're afraid to ask which, go ask your mother, go ask your father. You know what I mean? That sort of stuff. I'd say if you're together, don't be afraid to be alone, right? Mm-hmm. You can be better as a parent. I know me as a parent, and now with decisions that I made for my children, I didn't have to be questioned by anybody. Mm-hmm. I was able to, right or wrong, I'm not perfect. I made decisions that probably weren't the best, but I was able to make those decisions and I didn't have to get questioned. The kids had consistency with me before and after the fact. When I got custody of them, 100% custody, they knew consistency from me. They knew when they come to ask me stuff, when the answer was the answer, that was the answer, right? There could be discussion depending on what it was. So to your listeners, I'd say don't judge those men and women out there that are single parents. Go communicate with them. They might need some support once you open the door of their facade that they've been presenting. And to those of your listeners that are still married and hurting and don't know where to turn, living in quiet desperation, it's okay. There's so many groups out there. You could even reach out to me and have conversation, whether you're a woman or a man. My kids have jokingly called me the dad mom now for close to probably 15 years, right? So I have a perspective on both sides, and I'm not going to judge you. I'm not a woman hater. I'm not a man hater. I'm just a human that loves everybody and wants to help everybody out. So feel free to reach out to me. There's always hope, right? There's a storm. Like they say, there's always hope before the storm. Have hope that your kids should be your number one priority, and staying in a broken relationship is not good.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dwight. That's very wise information for our listeners. I think it's so important. So everybody, make sure you go to giveaheck.com and check out Dwight. And we'll have all the links on the show notes, and we'll have a link on this video. So thank you all for listening and watching. And everybody head over to pattikatter.com to listen to more episodes. Thank you all, and have an amazing day. Thank you, Dwight, so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed our time today.
Thank you so much for having me on, and I enjoyed myself. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Wake Up with Patti Katter.
Thank you.
Thanks for all that you do.
Sponsored by the Patriotic Mermaid. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
For more information and updates, check out www.pattikatter.com or thepatrioticmermaid.com. Also, make sure to drop us a follow on Instagram at Wake Up with Patti Katter and at The Patriotic Mermaid. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on all major podcast platforms. Until next time, take care.